question est à vous trois.
Donc, on va commencer avec M. Drabkin.
Oui, c'est clairement une compétence provinciale. Alors, il faut respecter le gouvernement de M. Legault. Et c'est au peuple du Québec d'essayer que son position soit claire. Mais le fédéral n'a pas un rôle à jouer concernant cette question.
Merci.
Madame Jeté.
Oui, donc on demande, dans le fond, au fédéral de ne pas se mêler de la loi 21. Donc, c'est sûr que nous, de notre côté, on n'ira pas directement intervenir, mais tout ce qui est des intérêts du Québec, on va être là pour supporter sans action directe à ce niveau-là. On va laisser l'Assemblée nationale décider de ce qu'ils veulent faire. Merci.
Et M. Green.
Oui, comme c'est une question provinciale, le Parti vert n'a pas une position officielle sur ça, mais je peux partager avec vous mes pensées personnelles. Et je suis complètement contre l'abolition des commissions scolaires parce que c'est les commissions scolaires qui garantissent le contrôle de la communauté. Et pour la communauté anglophone, c'est très très important qu'on ait le contrôle de nos propres écoles. Et c'est pour cette raison que c'est une garantie constitutionnelle. Alors, moi, je préfère que M. Legault respectera la Constitution sur cette question.
Je vous remercie beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. La prochaine personne va être le 396. Est-ce que quelqu'un a le billet 396? 396. Anyone with 396? Nope. All right. The next person will be 390. 380. Way in the back. Have to work your way up on this side. The next person would be the person who came right after you, actually, number 391, 391.
How do I get there?
On the side here. I think this would be the best way to do it. So, yeah. The following person is 391, 391. Please go ahead.
Working moms. Okay, so this is a question. Am I allowed to ask a question of multiple candidates?
Yes, you can choose three.
Okay, so Neil Drabkin, Mark Arnault, Franklin Girdler. A preface. Mark Arnault, I respect your work so much. I've had nothing but positive experiences with your team locally. Flashback to election night when Trudeau became our Prime Minister. Signaling the end of the Harper era, I remember feeling relieved, hopeful, and even a bit inspired. My feelings have since changed, including those of many Canadians. The first promise that was broken was on electoral reform, and then the pipeline. And finally, the deeply unfortunate incidents surrounding Jody Wilson-Raybold's departure from the party. And the most recent racist incidents uncovered involving our very own Prime Minister. And to the Conservatives, don't get too comfortable. Your leader has said he is fully accepting of candidates who have a history of overt racism and homophobia. What are you all personally doing, and what is your party doing to abolish systemic discrimination in government?
Again, I ask that we please hold applause until the end. I will repeat it each time you do it, but it would save us all a lot of time. So please hold your applause. There's going to be plenty of opportunity to applaud at the end. We'll start with Mr. Drabkin, please.
Well, racism has no place in this country, and we have to continue to try and eradicate it wherever it rears its ugly head. And obviously, the leader of this country should be leading that effort. But he suffered a severe credibility problem in that regard with the news last week. There's no getting around that, and there's no diminishing that. He's a man who made many promises, as you pointed out, in 2015, and many people in this room believed him. But he's failed to live up to those promises, and he's lost the moral authority to govern. Andrew Scheer will not tolerate racism within the ranks of our party. He's made that unequivocal. that anybody who demonstrates any racism will be thrown out. There's no place for racism in this country. We are a country that is blessed with cultural diversity. People came to this country from the four corners of the earth, and they built this country, and they will continue to come to this country. And their rights and their freedoms must always be respected, starting from the Prime Minister right down. So a commitment from a Conservative government is that we will continue to respect the rights and freedoms of all Canadians.
Mr. Gurna.
So we've made some mistakes, and I think that it's been talked about quite a bit. I spoke about the blackface situation a week ago. I was very disappointed personally myself, but I did accept the Prime Minister's apology. All people try to learn from their mistakes and to do better, but I do want to say that I also believe that our current Prime Minister is the most progressive Prime Minister in the history of this country. And why am I saying that? Well, one of the first things that he did was to open Canada's arms to 50,000. And you did too. Everybody did. 50,000 Syrian refugees who were in desperate need to flee Syria. He has initiated, like no other previous Prime Minister, the necessary steps of reconciliation. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about the investments in housing, on reserves, on education, on drinking water. 87 boil water advisories have been eliminated, on implementing all 94 recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Act, and also addressing the recommendations of the report on murdered and missing Aboriginal women. He has also officially apologized for the things that we did as a country that we deeply apologize for. I believe he has learned from his mistakes, and I believe that we are going forward as a progressive government.
Thank you, Mr. Girdler.
Thank you for the question. On electoral reform, I think it's pretty clear. I won't comment on that a lot more, except that we just certainly didn't get it, even though it was supposed to be the last. On the pipeline, I'm frankly horrified. This government has put $5 billion into that Trans Mountain pipeline, and we're talking about putting another $6 billion at least. And I can tell you one thing, as a lawyer who works in energy regulatory matters, and someone with a background in economics, I can tell you, you can't put $11 billion of infrastructure in the ground and then say you're going to be able to walk away from it. This is a 40 or 50 year commitment to the tar sands. It's incompatible with any kind of path to meeting our greenhouse gas targets and restoring our international credibility in that file so we can take the game to the other large emitters. On Jody Wilson-Raybould, it's a question of the rule of law. It's a question of respect for women and respect for Aboriginal people. And I must say, it's important to remember that the SNC-Lavalin affair touches down right here in our riding. $22 million paid in bribes in the building of the MUHC site, and now when you pay your parking fees, it goes to SNC-Lavalin. In terms of reconciliation, the government is not implementing UNDRIP and respecting lands and Aboriginal jurisdiction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Girdler. The next question is 391. After that, la prochaine va être 393, 393. If you can get yourself ready. Do I have 393 somewhere? Anyone? 393, 393. Nope. All right. 370, 370. 370. Yes? Okay. Sir, you can go ahead.
Hi, my name is Paul Scriver. I live in this community and I've been active doing things to improve our community. I was intrigued by Marlo's last question. I thought she was maybe going to ask some of the same things that I wanted to ask, but my question is specifically about the intertwined nature of the Canadian economy with the oil economy. And specifically, what is the next government going to do about disambiguating the oil industry from the government's actions. My brother-in-law and I have had probably about 15 major arguments about the oil industry. He used to be a roughneck in the Alberta oil fields. And over the years, he's become a vegetarian, and he recently bought a Nissan Leaf. And we still argue, and he still is fiercely dependent on the people who work in the oil fields. But he sees the change and the need for change. And right now, at the UN, Greta Thunberg is there speaking truth to power. And what is power doing but turning their backs and smirking at her? I haven't heard, I've heard from Mr. Green, it's in a position of power to be in the minority and to be able to say things without having the commitment of what you're going to do. But the polls are saying at the moment things are likely to change, that we are looking at a potentially, I'm sorry, I have a timer too, I guess. Conservative minority, or perhaps a liberal minority. Neither of the candidates on this podium has said anything about how they're going to, how we're going to get away from the oil economy. The climate change is a real thing. So I would like to ask Mr. Drabkin and Mr. Garneau specifically, and then I would love to hear more from Mr. Green, but I think on this question I'd rather hear from Mr. Gertler.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Drabkin.
Sure, the economy and the environment are certainly not mutually exclusive. They can be balanced, they go hand in hand. In fact, we have the third largest oil reserves in the world. We are blessed as a country with this type of resource. It creates jobs across the country, not just in Alberta, but from coast to coast to coast. Tens of thousands of jobs for Canadians. The hundreds of millions of dollars of royalties that are generated from it go to pay healthcare, social services, and everything that we rely upon as Canadians. We have to address the situation in a diligent and responsible kind of way. Our government will come out with a real plan to address climate change, one that doesn't tax Canadians, but goes after the biggest emitters. And that's fundamental, to make sure that those who are actually polluting the country will provide money into a fund that will create clean technologies. Sure, we need to make our transition to a green economy, but that will take time. In the meantime, we have to continue to use the oil and be able to export it to markets that are prepared to buy it from us, so that we can continue to pay for all of the social services that everyone in this room relies upon. That's the responsible approach to take.
Thank you. Mr. Garneau.
I was particularly proud today because I think it was the biggest announcement that the Liberal Party has made with respect to the environment in my time as a politician in 11 years. It was a watershed moment, in my opinion, because today we announced that we would commit to a net zero emission Canada by 2050. So we're joining 65 other countries in that. Now you can say, oh, well, that's 30 years away. What does that mean? We are also going to be setting legally binding 5-year milestones that have to be respected with respect to moving towards that 2050 net zero Canada. We will be appointing a group of experts, scientists and economists to give us the best advice on how to get there. We also announced today for the first time that we will exceed our 2030 targets, something that we had not said before. And so the final part that I want to get is that we will also have to help energy workers and other people who support the economy in the area of natural resources to make that transition away. So there's a great deal of very ambitious work that we're making, but we announced that today as something that we feel is absolutely essential to commit to for Canada.
Thank you. Mr. Gertler.
Thank you for the question. C'est minuit moins quart, minuit moins cinq. It's, you know, the Conservative Party doesn't have a credible plan. And what Mr. Garneau just said and I haven't had the press briefing that he's had, obviously. But we're talking about something in 2050. We're talking about reaching the 2030 goals, which are Stephen Harper's goals, which are inadequate. The best science now shows that if we even meet our Paris commitments, Paris Accord commitments, the rise in temperature will be something in the order of 2.6 to 4 degrees, catastrophic levels. So we need a war scale effort. It's not we're going to balance this and balance that. The environment's not a thing. The environment is the planet, and it's all of us, and we need to take this much more seriously. This is not a vendetta against people in Alberta, and it's going to have to be done in a way that also helps Bay Street and the Toronto Stock Exchange get off oil too. We've got a huge problem, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't attack it with everything we've got, and that's what the NDP is planning to do.
All right, thank you very much. Again, I don't know how many times I'm going to have to say this. I'm hoping that this is not your last time. Please hold your applause to the end of the evening. I appreciate that. The next question is coming up to the microphone. After that will be number 388, le 388. Does someone have 388?
Yeah, right here.
Excellent. Just go up to the side here.
First of all, I want to thank everybody that showed up, including the audience. I believe we are part of the solution.
Okay, you can applaud.
Okay. I am lucky that I teach Tai Chi. It is a big improvement. I can walk again. But you know that I go in the two NDG parks, and early in the morning, there's a lot of homeless people there. I won't give you the numbers, you just have to look. And it's disturbing because it's